In this edition of Locked On Capitals, it is the player review and profile of Evgeny Kuznetsov. Let's talk about Evgeny next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, and I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So in this edition, that is what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov, the player in profile, and what kind of player is he actually. Taking a look at him, he is coming off a breakout year. The interesting thing about Evgeny was that the year before they were talking about, they would like to trade Evgeny, but they could not get enough for him. So they were kind of stuck with him. And I guess it was, kind of luck or maybe just some, Brian McClellan's ability to see down the football field and go, Evgeny's having a bad season this season. But I think that, intrinsically, he is a great hockey player, and I think he will be good again in the 21-22 season. And 79 games played, he had 24 goals and 54 assists, and that put him in the top 3 for the Washington Capitals in goals scored. So just a really great breakout season for Evgeny. I think that, as he gets older, he's getting a bit more mature. If we look back historically, he had those personal issues. I don't want to go into any detail on that, but he also had, those issues with COVID. When COVID was raging, he got together with Samsonov and Ovechkin, and guess what? Surprise, surprise. Kuznetsov came down with COVID, but that's the past, and let's put the past in the past. I want to talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov, the player right now, this past season, and what we can expect from Evgeny Kuznetsov this coming season, which will be starting here just honestly later this month at training camp. So I'm really excited to see about Evgeny and what all the players have, but just kind of take a look back on, historically, that is kind of the nature of these profiles and reviews of different players, is just to talk about what we can look forward ahead and what we've also seen in the past. This article was in the Nova Caps, and they were talking about during the Washington Capitals 2018 run to the Stanley Cup, a center Evgeny Kuznetsov was in short and invaluable, leading the team in scoring during the postseason. The former first-round pick provided what a game changer he could be. In subsequent seasons, a myriad of circumstances saw the dynamic forward struggle with inconsistency. The 2021-22 season saw a rejuvenated Kuznetsov emerge as one of the Caps' best assets. And, if you take a look at it, it's kind of interesting to see what kind of role he's taken on with his Capitals as, generally speaking, the top line center. Historically, that has been Nick Backstrom throughout the years going on, but I don't think that's to really say anything too disparagingly about Nick Backstrom. I think that honestly, all they're trying to do is just to kind of spread the wealth a little bit. We all know that Ovechkin and Backstrom on a line together is magic. So I think that, what the coaches have tried to do over the last few years is to just kind of spread that out a little bit. So you can have Kuznetsov on the top line with Ovechkin and Wilson or fill in the blank, whoever that may be. And then on the second line, you can have Backstrom holding down that second line, so you can kind of, like I say, spread it out a little bit so you're not just having all your goal scoring potential on one line. So while the 21-22 season, in which Kuznetsov finished second in scoring with 78 points, tied for first in assists 54, and tied for second in goals 24, and was also given the responsibility by head coach Peter Laviolette, seeing time on the penalty kill averaging over 1 minute of shorthanded ice time per game. In addition to his role on the power play, Kuznetsov productive start and finish to the 21-22 campaign with a comfort for the Capitals team that did not get for a long time. So, I mean, I think that, with Kuznetsov on the second line, I think that it gave the Capitals the ability to, like I say, to spread out some of that goal scoring. So you're not just getting all the goal scoring on the top line with Ovechkin. The upcoming 2022-23 season, however, just might be the most important for Kuznetsov in terms of continuing his play from the previous campaign. Backstrom, still affected by the aforementioned hip injury, underwent surgery, which is recently discussed in detail during the offseason, which will quite possibly keep him out of the lineup for some time. As a result, it will fall on the Capitals players to pick up the slack, but a hot start from Kuznetsov may be the most important part. And I would have to say that that is true. And it was kind of a bit of panic around the Washington Capitals when Nick Backstrom did announce that he needed that hip resurfacing procedure done, and who is going to fill that huge role that he plays on this team. Well, as it turns out, Brian McClellan went out on free agency and picked up Dylan Strome, who is ostensibly going to be that second line center. The good thing about Dylan Strome is, say for some reason Nick Backstrom does come back sooner, he can also play the wing. So I think that the Capitals should be in a good position there. While Kuznetsov has by no means had an underwhelming career thus far, 496 points in 599 games played, prior to 21-22, he struggled to match or come close to his previous career-high offensive output, 83 points in 79 games in the Cup-winning 17-18 season. On a consistent basis, and off-ice incidents and a lack of confidence and morale led to the 26th overall pick in 2010, feeling the pressure from all sides with trade rumors surrounding him in the 2021 season. And I do remember that. And it was a crazy time for Evgeny Kuznetsov. And I remember the fan base was like, we got to move on from him. His days are over. I know that he was drafted well. And, he was kind of the, who the Capitals thought was going to be this next greatest player, but he hasn't lived up to his potential. And, that kind of just speaks volumes of the fan base, that speaks volumes of the beat writers, that you can just sing the praises of someone one moment, and then if they have one off year, get them out of here. They're no good. And, I remember watching it, and I remember watching the games, and I remember thinking to myself, something is wrong with Kuznetsov here. I think we all saw it. But I think, it was his personal issues that he was dealing with, and the COVID stuff and all that. I think that all those factors, and then the fact that everyone was being critical of him, you got to remember at the end of the day, these are NHL players, but they are people and they are susceptible to, criticism. And you can also kind of get, caught up in your own head where you're like, maybe I'm not the player that I once was. So I think that, like I said, Brian McClellan and whoever, fate, whatever you want to call it, was really on the Capital side. And, honestly, on Kuznetsov's side, as he was able to continue to find a role on this Capitals team. All right, after the break here, we are going to continue to talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov and a little bit of his history. We'll talk about Evgeny next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. And guys, if you haven't gone over to BetOnline yet, what are you waiting for? You're obviously a fan of sports, so head over to BetOnline. It makes watching the games that much more exciting. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back to this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this edition, we are talking about Evgeny Kuznetsov And, how just a couple years ago or so, he was kind of, he was on the trading block, and a lot of the most prominent beat writers for the Capitals were saying that, we would love to trade Evgeny, but, we can't get enough for him. And then a breakout season last season, I think kind of just, turning all that away from him and just saying, hey, I am still the Evgeny Kuznetsov. I had a bad season. I've got this, guys. While Backstrom's absence at the start of last season was certainly an incentive for Kuznetsov to take advantage of an increased role, he entered training camp in an improved mood and mindset, one that led to his 78-point season, career-high average 2017 of ice time, increased responsibilities at both ends of the ice, and 56.1 Corsi to finish the regular season. While the expectation of another productive season for the 30-year-old Kuznetsov was present prior to this coming season, with Backstrom unlikely to begin the season in the lineup, the Caps will need the bird to come alive from the word go. With a strong supporting cast, there is no reason to think that he won't meet the challenge. And I agree with that assessment on Nova Caps. I do definitely think he's going to have another great season, and I would love nothing more than to see the Birdman come out again. And when Evgeny Kuznetsov is feeling the most confident and he scores one of those great goals, he does one of those bird moves. And I think that it is endearing to Capitals fans, and I think it also gets into the heads of the opponents. So I think that, I hope to see more of that confidence coming from Evgeny in the coming season here as well. Just kind of taking a look, on what we can expect from him. I know that, he did have that off season. And like I say, I think that, he has turned the page in his career. And, I hope, that, we don't ever see kind of, him falling back to those ways that he was. But just to kind of rewind the clock a little bit, who is Evgeny Kuznetsov, the player? So just from his most beginning phases, the scouting report, the book on him is as talented offensively as any center in the NHL. He is capable of being an electric playmaker and has the shot to finish off chances on his own, can disappear for stretches, but is becoming more consistent as he moves through the prime of his career, is well above average in shootouts, has had some off-ice incidents that led to suspensions. When used as a penalty killer, he can be dangerous. And I agree with that assessment. That was kind of what, the outlook on him and what they saw coming from him. Some of the NHL insiders, that was their projections on him. And, I do hope that, like I say, they can he can rekindle some of that mojo that he has had in his life, because, the Capitals are really going to need that from him. If you take a look at where they're at, they're in a tough position where they have Backstrom out of the lineup. And, you have still, what are two unproven commodities in the form of Dylan Strome and Connor Brown. On paper, they seem like they're going to be great players, but ultimately we don't know what we have. And then we also have to factor in that, of course, Tom Wilson is going to be coming back at some point. So, that is going to lead to a different role for Connor Brown. Where is he going to fit in? And, just taking a look at Kuznetsov, that's what I'm talking about, is they are going to need him to be the Birdman. They are going to need to see, Evgeny Kuznetsov from the past continue to make those great moves on this team, because, like I'm saying out there, it's not an easy thing to look and to judge him and say, that this is going to go right and this is going to go wrong. All we know really right now is that Evgeny Kuznetsov is coming off a really great season. So just to kind of take a look at his bio and his career stats, he is a big guy. He's 6'2", 207 pounds. Experienced 9 seasons in the NHL. So here's some of his career stats. This is really kind of taking the face off the clock and looking at the gears. Kuznetsov has been one of the most impressive centers in terms of his on-ice production since entering the NHL ranks. Here are Evgeny Kuznetsov's complete career numbers to date. This is through the 21-22 season, of course, because we haven't played next season yet. He's played 599 games, 153 goals scored. Take a look at that. Just that alone, 153 goals scored. Where would the Capitals have been without those 153 goals? Suffices to say, those would probably have been some losses for the Capitals because they don't have that kind of production on all of their lines. So you can kind of start to see the integral role that he plays on this team. 343 assists and 496 points. And then just kind of taking a look at his contract and where we are with him. Kuznetsov's contract was a big topic of conversation among NHL analysts and what was an off year in the 2021 season. But with the world inching back to normal, Kuznetsov has looked like himself in 21-22. The Russian center signed an 8-year, $62.4 million deal on July 2nd, 2017, with a $7.8 million annual cap hit. Capitals general manager Brian McClellan expects Kuznetsov to play up to the value Washington fans have come to expect from him. Thankfully, Kuznetsov has delivered just this year. His contract ends following the 24-25 season, and the arrow is pointing up for Kuzi. I have no reason to believe that things aren't going to continue on the trajectory that he's on. So the celebration and what he's known for. Kuznetsov's signature celebration, the Birdman, has taken off among Capitals fans. Always a great sight to see Kuzi spread his wings after getting the puck past opposing goalies. Kuznetsov made his Birdman celebration famous throughout the Washington's magical Stanley Cup title run in 2018, especially after scoring the series-winning goal against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Do you all remember where you were when that happened? That was just a really special moment for the Washington Capitals and really kind of endeared him to the Capitals fans. And one of the great Russians on the team that I am happy to say is seeing a bigger role, and he is ultimately living up to his expectation. And I look for bigger and better things from Evgeny this coming season. All right, so after the break here, we are going to continue to talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov. What kind of player is he, and what is his origin story? We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. Are you one of the people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You're not only putting yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. You've been using marijuana in any form. Do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different, you get a DUI. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals as we continue to talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov and his breakout season that he had last year. I know that, the season before that he was a little bit derailed, but I do think that the arrow is pointing up for Evgeny Kuznetsov, and I do see bigger and better things from him going forward. And just to kind of take a look at his history and where he comes from, he goes all the way back to the 07-08 season when he was playing in Russia. And then just to kind of take a look at some of the stats when he played for the Capitals. He joined the Caps in the 13-14 season. In his first season, 17 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, and it kind of inched its way up. The 15-16 season saw him get 20 goals for the first time, 19 in the 16-17 season. In the 17-18 season, 27 goals, and then 21 in the 18-19 season. And then he had that off season that we talked about in the 2021 season with 9 goals. In this last season, 24 goals. So like I say, I think that things are going well for him, and I do think that the arrow is pointing up. And he does have the accolades. He does have the endorsements and the recommendation from his teammates. Some of his comments as one of the most dynamic players, and he can take over the league if he wants to. I think he's that talented and sees the game better than anyone else. That's John Carlson, one of his teammates, talking about it. Nick Backstrom says Kuznetsov's stick handling elicits a certain awe from those who watch him most. As a Capitals teammate and staff describes how he moves the puck on the ice, it looks like he's dancing out there. Brian McClellan goes on to say, it's effortless, it's smooth, it looks like he's not even trying. He'll come to a complete stop and reverse out of it. It's fun to watch somebody do that stuff. It's got to be unbelievable to play, and you know that you have that available. That's why I always think about how fun would that be to do that. And, as you know, I'm not a guy that is a great skater, but, I can kind of echo what Brian McClellan is saying there, is to watch Evgeny Kuznetsov play in stick handle and puck handle. It does look like it's something, as to someone that doesn't have a lot of experience, that, hey, I could probably do that. Truth be told, I probably couldn't. But when you take a look at it, he is an enjoyable person to watch. TJ Oshie says, when you come watch a game, there are certain players that get people out of their seats, and it's a joy to watch. I don't even like watching hockey, so when I see Kuzi going, it's one of the only times I enjoy. It's an odd quote from TJ Oshie, but that is a quote from him. And, that's what I'm saying, is that he is just a fun guy to play around. And just his origin story, where did he start? On March 8th, 2014, Kuznetsov signed an entry-level contract with the Washington Capitals. On March 25th, he scored his first career NHL goal, which happened to be a shorthanded goal against the LA Kings with an under minute left to tie the game. The Capitals, however, eventually lost 5-4 in the shootout, and Kuznetsov was one of those interesting players. They talked about him coming over here for the longest time, but then he had that career going in Russia. So that's why, we kind of had to wait a little while. On April 23rd, 2015, Kuznetsov scored his first and second Stanley Cup playoff goals of his career against the New York Rangers. In the same game, he also had an assist in an eventful 5-1 Washington win. On April 27th, 2015, he scored the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals against the Islanders in the same series, advancing the Capitals to a conference semifinal matchup against the 14-15 President's Trophy winning New York Rangers. During the 15-16 season, Kuznetsov was named his first All-Star game as a replacement for Alex Ovechkin, who pulled out due to a lower body injury. On July 2nd, 2017, the Capitals re-signed Kuznetsov and a restricted free agent to an 8-year, $62.4 million contract worth $7.8 million per. In 24 playoff games in 2018, Kuznetsov had 12 goals and 20 assists for a total of 32 points, second only to Evgeny Malkin in 2009. Among players in the last 25 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, Kuznetsov's series-clinching overtime winner in Game 6 against Pittsburgh secured the Capitals' first berth in the Eastern Conference Finals since 1998. Wow. Ending years of the playoff failure against the Penguins, his 4 assists in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals made him only the 4th NHL player to record that many in a finals game, the first in 22 years. Kuznetsov led the league with 32 points in 24 appearances in the 2018 postseason, but lost the line mate and teammate captain Alex Ovechkin in the Conn Smythe Trophy competition. So, just taking a look at his career, to look at him and to see his many accomplishments, are we really going to hold one off season against Evgeny Kuznetsov? Me personally, I'm not going to do that. That seems ridiculous to me. I just rolled off the many statistics there and accolades that were given to him by his teammates and coaches of what a great man and what great a player he is. I'm not going to hold one off season against Evgeny Kuznetsov. And like I said, the arrow's pointing up for him. I do think he is going to have another great season for the Caps at center, top line. And the Caps are going to need him to be that guy to get that production because, on paper, like I say, you look at Dylan Strome and you're like, that looks like he played pretty good. He also was playing on a line with Kane in Chicago. You also then have to take a look at Connor Brown, played pretty good. On paper, you look at that, looks pretty good. But what is actuality? That is what's going to remain to be seen. Training camp is only a few weeks away, and I think that's when things are going to get real. That's when the rubber meets the road. That is when you're going to see these young guys that have been vying for spots on this team for years are going to say, you want to know something? I'm going to fight you for that job, and I'm going to do it by playing really great. And it's going to remain to be seen who cracks this roster and who plays where. And it's going to be an exciting time For the Capitals and the NHL, it is my favorite time of year as we head into the fall, and it is hockey season. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you next time.